Episode 422, fifth episode, and I've had four people independently tell me that the audio sucks because the old room, I had a bunch of like bureaus around me and I covered them with moving blankets, and now it's in just a square room. So I spent a lot of time setting up it looks like a little kid making a fort inside. I have a mountain of moving blankets and stuff, but as long as it's off camera, you can't see it, so it looks good, and I can just keep faking it. So, but because I'm a moron and you're highly intelligent, I decided to ask you yesterday, what topic would you like to talk about? And you sent me several, all of which are interesting, but I thought I think the most pertinent is regarding the verdict on Derek Chauvin regarding George Floyd's death. And I mean, I talked to an ATF guy yesterday, and we were talking about, it's regardless of like what the outcome was, it's still better than like Soviet Russia, where at least we can go out and make our voices heard without being mowed down. However, it's interesting that I saw an interview yesterday with some protesters, and I think Milwaukee, saying verbatim, I don't think all white people should be killed, but I think we should kill a couple so that they can feel our pain. And then you have Maxine Waters going out and saying, be confrontational. 2 hours later, there was a drive-by shooting at the National Guard. I mean, are we learning the hard way? If you give them an inch, they take a mile?
Well, I think the first thing to mention is that that trial verdict, guilty on all three charges, second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and manslaughter, first of all, is inherently self-contradictory. You cannot be guilty of all of those three things because they contradict one another. But number two, it will be appealed for sure. The fact that the judge in that case did not sequester the jury, did not request, or the prosecution, or the defense, I should say the defense, I guess, did not demand a change of venue. The inflammatory incitement to violence by Representative Maxine Waters, the payment by the city of Minneapolis to the family of George Floyd in the amount of $27 million, way before the trial ever even got started, indicating, it would seem, an acceptance of guilt, culpability in the case on the part of the city of Minneapolis. All these things are going to, I think, play into the appeal process.
Now, after talking to you so many times, and General Spaulding, and I think I've eternally wrecked my skill solving ability, or my problem solving skills, is because now I look at everything and I'm like, I'm turning into James Jesus Angleton. I'm becoming, everything I see, I'm like, it's the Russians, it's the Chinese, is because there's the different layers. But I always think, I'm like, if there was a beneficiary, what would it be? And it would be violent mobs in the streets, pressing and having an effect on the outcome of judicial cases. And that's what I see as the most pertinent thing, is regardless if he should or shouldn't be, whatever, is the fact that there is, Maxine Waters, we want a guilty verdict, we stay in the streets until we get one. I mean, that's throwing out the Western court system. What's the point of having the court?
Well, here's another thing. The judge literally invited the media with cameras into the courtroom to live stream the proceedings. People may have watched it on TV. I did not watch any of it on TV, but it was broadcast. That means that even though the cameras were not supposed to be turned towards the jurors, and I guess they were not turned towards the jurors, nevertheless, reporters in the room, camera people, saw the jurors. The jurors were not safeguarded in any way. Their identities were not safeguarded in any way. They were not sequestered in any way. They were petrified.
Yeah. I would
that
too.
alone it should cause a mistrial. Right there.
I mean, if you and I were in there, yeah, I'd be terrified too. You're burning down last summer, burning down courthouses with impunity, and you have your senators and congressmen and women saying, "Do more. We're not doing enough." Yeah, I'd be terrified to be that one guy. I'd be terrified to be on that jury and not say what the mob wanted, because it's very easy for you and I to sit here behind a podcast and say what should and shouldn't be done. I would be terrified if I was there. Like, I don't want to be the next spotlight. I don't want to be the next trending, like, take it to Tommy, some trendy hashtag. But for my uneducated mind I thought you can't put cameras in. I thought that's why there's like watercolor painting.
The judge has a lot of leeway as to how that judge may run a particular trial.
Okay.
It's that judge's courtroom, that judge's rules. And in this case, the media were invited right inside the courtroom. It's no wonder that jury wanted to wash their hands of this. They didn't care about justice or anything else. They just wanted to be safe and out of it as fast as they could possibly get rid of it. But all of that, I think, very much will play into the appeals process.
There's some irony to the whole. You're in the jury, and it's like, I know this is my civic duty, but I just want to wash my hands of this. I just want to go home to my family and don't want to be hunted down. There's some bittersweet irony into like, well, that's how a lot of cops feel. Maybe this is excessive force, but I just want to go home to my family. There's some kind of walking a mile in their shoes. But for me, I'm more interested in what the greater effects of this are. If for instance, I think it was 2 weeks ago, the police like last summer or last fall, when AOC tweeted out to all her followers, if anyone criticizes me, report them to Twitter, Instagram, whatever, and get them removed, which is always that nice, Jeffersonian, sarcastically, ideal of wiping out your enemies. And then that guy criticized her, I think 2 weeks ago, just said like, I don't know what his, excuse my French, probably something along the lines of like, this bitch is a moron. But the police showed up to his house simply for, there was somewhere in New York. They showed up to his house for criticizing AOC. And I know I'm rambling right now, but it seems like very slowly we're kind of, and I know it gets beaten into the ground, but boiling the frog, we're getting to this, it's self-censorship. So now it's, are you gonna criticize the political elite? Are the cops gonna show up to your house? Now, if there's a trial, well, let's put it to the court. At least we still have the court cases. Everyone's, innocent until proven guilty. Well, now you're kind of on trial in there on the jury, because now we're bringing the media in, and it's turning into this. We're getting more and more into, at least from my humble opinion and my subjective viewpoint, we're getting more and more to this like flashpoint emotional justice system, which is not a justice system at all. We're turning more into like, Lord of the Flies, kind of like everyone kill Piggy. Like, we're turning into this very, am I making sense? Am I just rambling? Do you get what I'm saying?
Well, here is one of the more immediate consequences, and that is that immediately, practically, the Department of Justice, the Biden administration Department of Justice, announced that it is going to be looking into the process for imposing more federal control on local law enforcement departments. This has happened gradually, more and more in the past several years, where the Justice Department steps in to a local police department, some major, metropolitan area, city, and imposes federal supervision, guidelines, mandates on that department from the federal level, which it is never intended to do. Mm-hmm. Law enforcement is supposed to be a local issue. It is supposed to be managed by the local citizens of the mayor, the elected officials, the mayor, the city council. The immediate aftermath of this Derek Chauvin trial is that the Department of Justice is now grabbing for even more power to centralize law enforcement in federal hands. That cannot stand.
Weird analogy. You have a child. Did she or he ever watch Hercules, Disney's Hercules growing up? I don't know if you're...
I'm not sure. My daughter is not a child anymore, about to be married this year, as a matter of fact.
Well,
but,
I'm 30, but
don't know if she saw that or not. I don't know for sure.
I'm 30, but I remember watching it as a kid, getting it from Blockbuster.
We were overseas a lot, so she may have been, seeing other cartoons, but not necessarily the ones that Americans might remember.
Okay, well, bear with me here. Anyone listening who's my age will probably have seen it. Disney's Hercules. It still holds up. It's awesome. Point is there's this scene where all the Titans come out of what is like the Disney version of hell. And it's a big ice god, it's a lava god, a rock god, a tornado god, a flood god. And they're climbing up Mount Olympus into like the heavens where like Zeus and Hera and they all are. And they're defending, it's the golden beacon on the hill, a lot like America. And then you have just like the demons crawling up. And these things are like a mile tall. But they're going really slow, and like the lava god, everywhere he goes, the lava hardens behind him. So he's just leaving this geologic kind of like snail trail, and they're climbing up, and it takes them, like 10 minutes, and you kind of see it happening in the background, and it's just like this. It's almost metaphorical of like the doomsday clock. You see them getting up to like the bright golden beacon on the hill, and if they get there, it's over. It kind of feels like if you could really zoom out, that's what we're looking at with America right now, right? I mean, Reagan, the shining beacon on the hill. But like several things. I mean, one, at least that I've been aware of since like 2000, maybe 10 or 11, really when I first started paying attention to it, was the militarization of the police, using all the surplus MRAPs from the Middle East. During the Boston bombers, I remember watching that. You just kind of saw this overwhelming force, which, hey, I get there's a bombing. So we have this physical ability to put force on the streets. Okay, so there's one. The next is we've slowly been normalizing censorship. You start with Milo Yiannopoulos, Alex Jones, Donald Trump, and now you're moving to actual terms, as we know, being removed from YouTube for election fraud. First strike, credit goes to Clare Lopez. Second strike, Dr. Hodkinson. For 2 weeks, one more strike, I'm gone. So that's this secondary thing. We're seeing this movement, this Overton window of the acceptance of removing free speech. Now we're seeing a third thing. Police going to a house of a guy who called out AOC on Twitter. We're seeing the kind of mob justice in the courts. It's all the Titans climbing up the hill that independently kind of look like worrisome things, but hey, it's America, it won't happen here. But we're seeing these things, so now what you're just saying is more federal control on local law enforcement. So we're seeing the ability, the MRAPs, we're seeing the social acceptance, censorship, Milo, Alex Jones, COVID, election fraud, and now we're seeing it put into action. It's kind of all the Titans climbing up the hill, where if at any given frame, it doesn't look that bad. But if you zoom out and look at it, they're climbing up Mount Olympus, and it's game over if they get there. Now, am I just going crazy after 420-something episodes, or is that an accurate kind of observation? Is that what's slowly happening? And can it be? Can the course be changed?
The Republic is certainly under attack from many different directions. But if we had to zoom out and describe what is happening, from a 20,000-foot view, perhaps, it would be that the foundational principles of our founding documents, Declaration, Constitution, Bill of Rights, etc., and founding fathers are under concerted attack. Mm-hmm. This has been gathering for quite a long time. It didn't happen overnight. It just may feel like it's culminating overnight because all of a sudden people maybe are becoming aware. They're seeing it, and it's sort of, it's all coming together at us. So I see what you're saying, and that's absolutely true. And we've talked about this before. how, the forces of communism, of Marxism, infiltrated, co-opted our institutions, beginning with academia, which is so much important because the graduates of our schools go into every other institution, the media, the popular culture, the government, etc. So those forces have been, working their way through our institutions, long march through the institutions, Antonio Gramsci, for a very long time. And it took, the crisis point of the Chinese virus last year, 2020, to sort of bring it all together and make it very, right now, right at this moment, imminent, and also overwhelming for so many American citizens. So maybe that's what you're thinking about.
Yeah. Do you think there's going to be a retrial with Chauvin?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No question.
How does that unfold? Don't know.
Yeah, don't know. Don't know.
Even like the process, can you enlighten me?
No, I mean, it will definitely be appealed. The appeal will go forward. I don't know if the federal appeals court will be the end of it or not. Could make its way all the way to the Supreme Court in the end. I don't know. But I have heard scholar, lawyer Alan Dershowitz talking about this in different, interviews, and this is his conclusion. And I'm sort of channeling a little bit Alan Dershowitz, what he said about this, that this appeals process has so, many bases on which to go forward. But he also did say it could make its way all the way to the Supreme Court. So it's going to be a long process. I mean, we're not talking about weeks or months. I mean, it even could be longer. It could be a year or more that this process will go on.
Could this be is this going to go down as like a Roe v. Wade or any of the important Supreme Court cases we learned in high school?
Well, there's no direct constitutional or legal principle involved that's under consideration. It's rather the procedure of the case itself, I think, with what are at least, credible questions about the legality, the propriety, of different things that I mentioned before. The judge's decisions about not sequestering the jury, about allowing the media into the room, about so many different aspects of this. The city of Minneapolis, paying the family of George Floyd $27 million, just barely, I think, a few weeks before the trial began. All of these things absolutely contributed to at least the perception that Derek Chauvin did not get a fair trial.
That being said, we also saw last year, at the very least, there's people like me and like yourself, obvious, openly supporters of Trump, who watched the election, and it felt like that we watched at 2 a.m. as all those states stopped counting. But that's more of our anecdotal recollection of it. The legal recollection of it is what we do know was there was a bunch of illegitimate legislative changes to the voting process in the months preceding it. And that was kind of what everyone was leaning on, was okay, regardless of, it seems like it was stolen, at the very least it can be challenged on the basis of what they did was not legal, and it will go to the Supreme Court. Texas has a great case. And it seemed like it was going to turn into this dragged out legal battle. But then one by one, as you so poetically said, there were a bunch of cowards, and we watched court after court fold, and then we saw the law of the land themselves say, we're not going to hear it. So I don't know if I can believe that we will see this trial of Chauvin go further and go forward, because we saw with the presidential election a very
it'll go forward. But it'll go forward. There will be an appeal.
But we saw all of those courts fold like a cheap suit, as my dad always says. Is that what we're going to see now? I mean,
No. We're going to see a very long, drawn-out appeals process that will last many, many months, but it will go forward.
Okay, fair enough.
There are too many anomalies. There are too many.
It's deja vu.
Apparent irregularities, apparent things that happened that really very credibly can be said to have denied Derek Chauvin a fair trial.
But couldn't devil's advocate, couldn't that have been said about the election last year?
It could, but that's a whole other story.
Okay.
This one again, I mean, it's not about any particular constitutional article or amendment or principle per se. I mean, certainly the right to a citizen of a free and fair trial. Yes, speedy, free, fair trial. But what I mean is that there's no broader, principle here other than, did this police officer get a fair trial? And there were too many irregularities, anomalies, and circumstances that just very obviously argue that he did not get a fair trial. So it's not about any great big constitutional principle. Again, as I say, aside from the constitutional right to a speedy, fair trial, public trial by jury. But aside from that basic principle, we're not dealing with, a free speech issue, a right to life issue. We're dealing with some almost technical legal issues that in the defense's perspective, will say that he was denied a fair trial and has every right to an appeal of the decision.
What I pointed out to a lot of friends, and time might show that I'm wrong, but as we see, as you said, the Biden administration moving to have more federal involvement with local law enforcement, with the Overton window shifting to accept that we will censor talk of election fraud, or we will censor talk of COVID vaccines and conspiracy theories. I've said to a lot of people after I got suspended for the second time is, it might not be this year, but at the rate things are going, eventually, once they've wiped out everyone on the right, what you're going to start to see is police officers, or I would imagine distant in the future, will be classified as federal officers. And what we're going to see is there will be an illegitimate killing of an unarmed person, but it will no longer serve the state for you to rally around it. And the next illegal thing to upload on YouTube or Twitter will be police body cam footage, or footage of someone like George Floyd being killed. And that's how I kind of see it years down the road, is that will be the next thing, is you can no longer do this. But by then it will have been, we will have been trained to accept that there are things we can't talk about. And that is what I try to bring to light, is like, that's not good for anyone. Not that it's good for anyone now, but that's where it's going, is it starts with, you can't talk about COVID or election fraud. It ends with, you sent out a mean tweet about the president, you now have 40 years of hard labor. Like, this is how it starts. To pivot on that point, not being able to talk about COVID or vaccines, we now have, I think, 3 of, right, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson. I think 2 of them are paused now. And there was a new study starting last night, or that was released last night, showing that I think the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, it might have been the Pfizer, it's one of them, I have no idea, they're the 4 horsemen. One of them are now showing that they can cause herpes. They can cause herpes outbreaks. And they're starting to see this in Germany. How much more sideways do you think this shit's going to go before there's any sort of actual kind of reaction to the vaccines? I don't mean like biological.
Well, let's take this one point at a time.
Sorry, I know.
You throw everything in there except the kitchen sink.
Throw everything in there. Claire, solve it all.
So let's go back to, where are we going with regard to free speech in the country?
Okay.
And I really want to be positive about this, because I'm seeing things happen in reaction to the big tech censorship that's been going on. I see reactions already happening in the free market space that we do still have. Mm-hmm. Number one that I can tell you about, of course, in competition to YouTube, is Rumble. People are moving to Rumble. Number 2, I don't know if you were watching perhaps a little bit earlier this week. This is Thursday. It went Monday and Tuesday for 48 hours straight. But the live stream rollout of Mike Lindell's new platform, online platform at frankspeech.com. And that will be a combination site for posting, for texting, and for posting videos. So it is a potential replacement for Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. That's what it's intended to be. Now, it's not fully built out yet. And if you go to that website, I haven't been there today, but I'm not sure if you can sign up yet for an account, but you soon will be able to. So I'm kind of hopeful that the free market is working in the way it's supposed to work and giving us these alternative options. Competition is what's going to matter here. Competition is what's going to keep free speech alive. I'm hopeful.
Hell yeah. Maybe I can I take a half of an ounce of credit for being positive? Does my nauseating positivity, is it rubbing off or not at all?
No, not nauseating at all. And that a private citizen, a businessman like a Mike Lindell,
sure,
puts his own money, pours it into this project, I think is just, absolutely a demonstration of the American way. Now, at the same time, we are hearing that President Trump is developing his own new social media platform, which won't be ready for another month or two or so. And so, more competition out there. This is how it's supposed to work.
Hell yeah. And it's, because, there's money to be, the very reason we have big tech oligarchs is, I think that's all the incentive in the world you need, not to go after that power, although I'm sure there are some people going after it for the wrong reasons. But the model works. It clearly works. That's why we have these big tech oligarchs, is because it works so well. People gravitate towards user-friendly, a good UI interface, or a good user interface platform, is that there is money to be, there's a killing to be made. So I didn't know Mike Lindell was doing one. I guess that shows the ability of the press right now to clamp down on wrong thing. But I know Trump was, I think 45 office. I think it's good. And BitChute's, I don't think BitChute's
another
as good,
one.
Not as good as Rumble, but they're doing God's work. They have an alternative platform, and knock on wood, but Spotify hasn't taken down a single one of my episodes. So maybe I'm just too small, because they've taken down 42 of Rogan, but Rogan's only a little bigger than me, so it's, I don't know. We're gonna have to see. We're gonna see if there's any parallels.
Well, the promise that Mike Lindell is making to anyone who signs up, whether it's an individual or an organization, a group, who signs up at frankspeech.com eventually, the promise he's making is that it is free and open. There are certain restrictions. No use of really offensive language, and you can think about
Sure.
what some of those prohibited words will be.
Sure.
They're very few. No outright incitement to violence. No pornography, obviously. But basically, other than that, it's a marketplace for free speech. And it's meant to be a platform for free expression, with only those very few restrictions that are perfectly reasonable. Anybody can understand why he would prohibit some of those things, but it's not much. Certain really bad words, which we won't repeat here, and pornography, immediate incitement to violence, which already is against the law. That's pretty much it on prohibitions.
And those are all things that, I'm even now getting banned from YouTube. I'm still fine with them doing that as a private company. Now, I know it's Section 230, and that's where the contradictory nature comes in. But so, and maybe I've finally lost it and I've floated off into the clouds of delusion, but is there a chance that big tech would get sued in the future for the removal of videos questioning the COVID vaccine?
Well, only if Congress at the federal level changes by law the liability that these big tech companies face. And you mentioned, the Section 230, which would, if it were to be revised or removed or, would permit bringing a suit against these companies. But with the Congress that's in there right now, probably not so much. Check back again in a year and a half or so.
Yeah. I'm curious to see how this unfolds if more and more adverse reactions come out to the vaccines, and now these companies were squashing videos questioning the vaccine. Could that be seen as damages? So, and not for me. I think I'm too tiny.
Well, I don't think this is going to be retroactive from whatever point the law may be changed.
Yeah.
But looking ahead, it's probably very much on the to-do list of the next Congress after the 22 elections, midterms.
Can I get your 2 cents on what you think about the Pacific Deterrence Initiative, the $27 billion plan to contain the CCP within like the primary and secondary island chains leading off their nations, putting on ground-based nuclear missiles? Am I seeing what I want to see and buying into the hype? Oh, maybe the military is going to do something against China, or am I taking it hook, line, and sinker?
Well, from what I've heard in public statements by senior Department of Defense, Pentagon officials on the subject of China, intelligence community officials as well, current and former, I think they're pretty sober-minded about the China threat. I think, at least on this one topic, they take it very seriously, and of course they're watching. They're watching very closely what China's been up to lately, which is, invading Taiwanese airspace repeatedly with jet fighters, with bombers, sending their naval vessels and their so-called maritime, merchant fleet vessels into Philippine waters, for example, into their exclusive economic zone. And things like ramming Vietnamese fishing vessels within their, 9-dot line or whatever. As well as the buildup of offensive missile capability and other capability along China's mainland's east coast facing Taiwan, the belligerent overt threats against Taiwan, all of that. They're watching all of that. And it's not just our senior officials who are watching that, but also, our regional allies, in particular what's called the Quad, which is India, Japan, Australia, plus the United States. Japan in particular, being closest maritime anyway. Well, Vietnam is close too, but of the Quad. And I think they really are taking it seriously. So, what will actually play out, we have yet to see. But strong deterrence, can't emphasize enough, is super important. A strong deterrence can turn back aggression, or hold it at bay at least. And I'm hoping that's what we're seeing.
And I've said it before. I know most of the audience I have accrued over a year and a half. I'm sure they hate me for it. But I do try to look at the Pacific Deterrence Initiative as I'll give credit where credit's due to the Biden administration. I obviously didn't vote for him, and he's not my guy. But the one thing I could never stand when Obama was in office or when Trump was in office is for 50% of the nation to act like that individual is the devil incarnate and that they are impossible of doing anything right. And I think that would be the death of our nation. When we can't look at anything President Trump did and say that's good, when he's not allowed to do anything good. I feel like the election was stolen. I don't like the the want for gun grabbing. I don't like the not pushing down on Section 230. I do try to find something, at least for my own sanity, if not anything else, to be like, can I find some good in this situation? And I try to look at the Pacific Deterrence Initiative as an objective good. I think most people call me a fence sitter, but is it a good thing? Is it a good thing, or am I a bitch?
Well, I mean, the question is, how effective is that deterrence, and that we can only, speculate on, because it's in the eyes of the enemy, right? Deterrence is measured in the eyes of the enemy. In this case, the Communist Party of China, Xi Jinping, and his senior PLA, People's Liberation Army officers. So, do the Chinese still have absolutely the intention of retaking Taiwan by whatever means necessary? Yes, they do. Do the senior officials of the Chinese Communist Party still intend to become so powerful in terms of their own military defense, land, sea, air, as well as space, technological, so powerful that they can effectively exert area deniability access to the United States in that part of the Pacific, the South China Sea? They have every intention of doing that, yes. Do the senior officials of the Chinese Communist Party intend to destroy the United States of America by whatever means necessary, be it biological weapon, technology, or some other means, or tearing us apart internally? Yeah, absolutely they do. Are we going to be aware enough, and willing enough, steadfast enough, with enough resolve to stand up against that? I still call that an open question, remains to be seen. Especially when you've got, people at the top levels of our government so badly compromised by the Chinese.
Yeah.
That really, throws a spanner in the works.
Yeah. I know I've got you for 5 more minutes. Because I'm like a kid in a CIA candy shop with you, it's just, you are my personal search engine. I can just throw my stupid questions at you, and people would pay for this kind of consulting, and I just get that's my thanks to you, Alice, is putting me in touch with Claire. Is I get to sit here and I'm just, questions I've had building in my mind for 20 years. I'm like, I got it. It's but what I want to do is I'll be back on YouTube, I think tomorrow. I think my suspension's over. Praise be to praise be to our communist overlords for being merciful. But there is commenting on BitChute and Rumble. What I wanted to do was, and I don't want to make you commit to anything, but for everybody listening, because I get more feedback about your episodes, maybe behind Dale, I get more feedback about your episodes than any others. People love listening to you. Not me, they love listening to you. This is the Clare Lopez Show.
Great.
I want them to, if anybody's listening, post topics or questions, or like me, if you just got questions that you now have the personal search engine to query, post questions or topics that you would like to ask Ms. Lopez, and obviously if you see any of them fit, you can answer them. But I have more people than you can shake a stick at that love listening to your episodes, that tune in to listen to yours, and I would like to see.
That's great to hear.
Well, they love
our chat is empty at the moment, though.
Yeah, none of it's live. I don't do it live.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, they don't. YouTube won't let me. They let Don the Pleb, but they won't let me because I have 2 strikes. I have wrong.
Okay, so we can pick up on any questions next time around.
Sure.
Then.
So if anybody listening, please post some questions in the comments on Rumble or BitChute. If it's up on YouTube, do it there, or text me or email me, Tommy'sPodcast@gmail. However long I have that before they take.
And we'll circle back for you.
Yes. Yeah. We'll circle back. So, Claire, thank you so much. Thank you for your
welcome.
patience. I am a kid in a CIA candy shop, and I'm sure this probably doubles as community service, as taking all my questions, but I thoroughly enjoy talking to you. So
No, this is great. I thank you for the platform, for the chance to chat every week. I think this is really, I mean, I hope it's a benefit to all the listeners too. But thanks for being with us, everybody.
Yeah, well, and thank you as always, Claire, for coming on. I love it. So, with that, we'll wrap this one up. God bless America. Don't stop fighting. Free speech. Oh, that's the thing I wanted to say, is I have had several people reach out to me in the episode you and I did, where I was like, is the CCP, is that a superior system, ruthlessness? And you kind of smacked that out of me, and you said, no, freedom will always prevail because people will fight for freedom. I've had more people reach out to me and say, I needed that episode. I needed that shot of positivity. Good. I did want to tell you that. People do appreciate, and I appreciate that. You smacked the bitch out of me.
But it doesn't happen all by itself.
No, it doesn't happen by itself. It only happens because
we make it happen, and it may not happen overnight.
So, but
yes,
it's worth fighting for, and we will fight for it because
absolutely.
That is the human condition. That is natural law. That's God's law. That's human law. Is we will fight for freedom because the other shit's not worth fighting for. So thank you for smacking that out of me. I needed that. Get a hold of yourself, Tommy. I needed that bucket of cold water. So thank you, Claire.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tommy.
Yep. As always, God bless. God bless America.
Thank
you, Miss Lopez. Bye-bye.
All right.